Hey, sports fans! Excuse me, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the live post-game show coming at you after the debacle that we'll call the Timberwolves versus Denver Nuggets. What an interesting game, I suppose is the word. Don't forget, stay with us for the whole show. We got some interesting guests coming up, a very big name coming on. I'm very excited to do that. We'll let you know as a surprise coming up as soon as they get over here. But what's up, Martin Jose, best friend of the breakdown? Always great to see you. Let's get in here. Who else is here? We've got all the usual suspects here. Why not go a little early because this game is over? And I kind of felt that like midway through the third quarter, Malone was going to pull the plug at some point quickly because it wasn't happening. You can kind of just tell sometimes, not to say that the Nuggets are mentally weak per se, but you could just kind of see it in the body language that they couldn't overcome the kind of force that the Timberwolves were bringing to the game. Also, it wasn't even like it was in game two. I didn't feel the physicality being as that's reserved for something different. But it's without question, they brought it. The weird thing about it was the first like eight or seven or eight possessions by the Nuggets were perfect for them. But it was also indicative they missed some of those shots that were really easy. So the Wolves didn't come out focused very well. And the Nuggets really were running whatever they wanted to get. They just were missing some of those shots. And then, by the way, they made them as well, and they had a nice little lead, forced the Timberwolves to call a timeout. But it was weird. From that moment on, it just completely went the other way. It had a huge run. It was, like 20-something straight points. They never recovered from that. So we'll talk a little bit about, like, how that was working, what the the strategy was, and I have to give a lot of credit to the Timberwolves coaching staff. It felt like they were getting completely outcoached the last three games. It's hard to win 4 games in a row, right? It's really hard to sweep anybody 4 straight games in the playoffs, second round. So, Malone might even just sort of chalk this up to that, and that just happens. It's really hard to play that high level for 4 straight games on the road, hostile environment. So that's part of it. And the fact that that the Nuggets have already seen this, have already dealt with this, came back in game 3, and was able to take control of the series, was probably what Malone is going to tell the team, on the plane ride back and once they get ready for game 7. But hey, game 7, everybody, that's exciting to me. I'm excited to see Anthony Edwards in a game 7. Cannot wait to see what's going on there. It's been a little bit of an up and down series for him, but mostly up. And they were much better prepared for what I broke it down in the last video you guys saw, how they were defending him. So don't forget, if you have any questions, Super Chat's the way to go on the YouTube side. And that'll get you on your name on the screen. We'll give you a lot of love. We'll give you a lot of all sorts of stuff like that. So it'll really help us, keep the show going. So I really, really appreciate it if you want to do that. If you're on the YouTube, the Twitter side, hop on over to YouTube. It's a clearer picture. I don't know. You get it certainly in a much more interesting comment section over on YouTube. So what's up, everybody? Case Kajani out there. Good to see you. Foxfire, always good to see. Mac Charles, Big Man Sam, Jordan Shaw. I'm seeing what they're saying a little bit about, Jamal Murray. It was an avalanche. I think everybody pretty much played terribly, even if Jokic had like some decent numbers. I think that they all were just shell-shocked. It was kind of surprising. So, we'll have to kind of see how that rebounds, but they've rebounded game after game in this whole season. So it shouldn't be surprising that we'll get a much better game in game 7. Now, for all of you people out there who are watching this show, and there are a lot of you out there, I've got a special guest to bring on right now who's going to break it down better than you've heard anybody break it down before on this show. So without any further ado, let's bring in Mark Jones of ESPN.
Hey, what's up, Coach? What's going on, Nick? Yeah, what a game tonight, man. What a game. Unbelievable. Didn't think it would be like this, but really impressed by the Timberwolves' response. After calling game 3, Tim Legler and I called game 3 in Minneapolis and felt like they really missed an opportunity to take a stranglehold, of course, on the series. And it might have been a lack of being able to handle success on looking back on it. But, man, this response really says everything about this team this year. And, defense travels, right? And game 7, it's not a lock by any means for the home team. Although the stats say that the home team has a great chance in game 7s.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, certainly for the longest time, game 7s, the home team won 80-some%. I do think that in the modern era of the 3-point era, I feel like that number has gone down a little bit, at least. It seems that way, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but we haven't seen them. Here's the thing. It feels like Denver has the experience of going through something like this. I don't know if Minnesota does, really. I mean, maybe Conley has played in the Game 7, but that's going to be an interesting way to see how they play, especially on the road.
Here's what I find interesting about it. Yeah, Conley has a lot of experience. He's played in big-time games. I think Gobert, probably going back to Utah, played on some pretty crucial situations. But here's where I think Minnesota, strangely enough, might have a little bit of an edge in that their alpha, Anthony Edwards, is 22 years old and fearless. He's too young to know fear, I think, at this point. And he showed it, by the way. He set the tone and tenor of the game in the first half. What did he have, 19, Nick, in the first half of the game, something like that? And when you look at how he shut off Jamal Murray's water in that first half, the die was cast at that point. And when he shut off Jamal's water in the first half, it kind of told me everything you needed to know about the way the night was going to go. I was asking Micah Nori, the acting head coach right now, and Coach Finch prior to Game 3 in Minneapolis, tell me what Ant does. How do you keep him? He's so competitive, right? They tell me that he always wants to guard the other team's number one option, whether it's a wing or a point guard. And sometimes they got to put him on option number 4 or 5 offensively. But when the time comes, they can't tell him that he can't. And tonight might have been one of those nights where he said, hey, listen, I'm taking Jamal from start to finish until we put this game in the bag and go home with it.
Absolutely. And it's funny because it wasn't as much of an issue in the last 3 games before tonight. Jamal Murray was on his way and able to play. He got an elbow thing, right? If you notice, right in the beginning.
Yeah.
And
it was weird.
I was watching carefully to see, is he high-fiving? Is he doing anything else that would show you that it wasn't working right? The one thing I noticed, though, was that he was hanging on his jumpers a lot longer and kind of shooting almost on the way down.
Interesting.
And that's a recipe for disaster for a shooter, especially when you're shooting from distance, because you lose all your energy on the way down to shoot those. Yeah. So I wonder if, and by the way, it could have just been, the moment, swallows you up, and next thing you know, you're kind of aiming that shot. Everybody was. I mean, what did you make? Did you feel like the Nuggets were getting like decent shots in the first half and just missing them, or what? How did you feel that was playing out?
I almost kind of. It looked like Minnesota had taken them out of their rhythm, much like they did in games 1 and 2. And credit to Elston Turner and Corliss Williamson are the guys that run Minnesota's defense. Mm-hmm. And credit to them for coming up with a game plan, because I think we've seen what's happened and how this series has evolved is in games 1 and 2, we saw that ball pressure on Murray with mostly McDaniels. And then when Joker was bringing it up, Cat was pressing up on him and making him work a little bit to bring up the court. So Denver's counterpunch was having Aaron Gordon initiate a lot and him bringing it into the front court and bringing it across. And they had success with that large part for the last 3 games. So I think whatever Elston Turner did defensively, whatever button they pressed worked tonight, because Denver never really seemed to get in a rhythm. And that combined with Ant having a good night on Jamal at the defensive end is pretty much all she wrote after that.
Sure. Mark, how much am I going to age myself if I tell you that I can remember watching Elston Turner play for the Bulls?
I know. Yeah. So do I, man. We both do, Nick. Both do. Without having to go on YouTube and watch highlights. I know, huh? Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And don't forget, Elston Turner was a lockdown defender back in the day. So it makes perfect sense that that's his specialty now, and understood how to make that work, even though the defense they play now is so much more, like, I think, complex than it was back then. But I think that certainly what they did defensively, again, bringing that energy and that force is something that they were missing the last 3 games. But they also made some interesting adjustments offensively. So they started running this interesting inside ball screen with Conley on the ball and Cat setting the screen and then forcing a switch way too easily. And then they go down to Cat with a huge mismatch. I'm trying to picture them doing that in the other games. I feel like this is a new wrinkle for them. And man, were they prepared to do it? And the Nuggets were not prepared for it.
No, I agree with you. That's a great observation, Nick, because I felt like Cat got a bunch of easy looks tonight. I'm looking at his box score. He had an impressive double-double. He only ended up with 10, but he seemed to look a lot more comfortable than he had in the previous 3 games, right? 10. He only took 10 shots. He was 4 for 10, 0 for 4 from 3. But he got some touches and some good looks at the basket early, and that kind of set him up a little bit. And anytime Jaden McDaniels is making corner threes, it's going to be a good night for Minnesota. So that was another one of the adjustments. Their ball movement was impeccable. You saw them trying. You pointed out they posted up to Cat, and then that activated the blender for Denver, right? And then Jamal Murray was trying to X out, and they would keep Rudy on the low block in the dunker spot, and Rudy got a couple of easy ones when they put Denver in rotation. So now the counterpunch has to come from Denver in Game 7, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I can't wait.
For sure. I mean, I was charting all the times there who was bringing the ball up and the result from games 2 and 4 in the last video, and we saw how they were ramping up Aaron Gordon, like you mentioned. Right. And not only were they ramping up those possessions, but the points per possession was going up as well, game per game. It definitely felt like they shifted and said, okay, we want Jokic bringing it up a little bit more, which, why break something that wasn't broken, or, it wasn't broken, don't fix it. It's interesting though, at some point though, it became, I think, a mental thing where once that it became a 10-0 run, 12-0, get closer to 20-0. Now those 3-point shots you're trying to take are a lot harder in a hostile environment.
Yeah.
And then everything else just falls apart. I mean, I think Mike Malone didn't know what to do, short of like take a technical foul again, and who knows if they're going to give it to him.
Yeah, Duck, there's a heating pad coming. Watch it.
Have you ever seen anything like that before in Game 2 when he came all the way out and then they didn't give it to him?
No, that was incredible restraint by the officials in that. And, there are some people that when this series is over are going to argue that Jamal Murray should have been suspended for throwing that heating pack. I'm not saying that he should have. I thought, $100 fine is pretty much, I think they got it right, but you could also make an argument that, he could have been suspended, and Michael Malone, him not even getting a technical was absurd. But man,
well, I connect those two things a little bit. It got to feel so. It might have felt so helpless, like the coach won't get a technical foul. I'm just going to throw something then, which kind of tells the ref, like, to give him a tech, right? Like, get that under control maybe then. And I know it was almost like he wants the tech. I'm not going to give him what he wants. Right? That's sort of what he's doing, right?
Hey, it's like an old story that Doc Rivers told me once on Masters Sunday when Tiger Woods was in the final round, and Doc was trying to get kicked out of a game, and one of the officials turned to him and said, "Hey, I want to watch Tiger too. You got to stay here."
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens. And so, thank God that nobody got hurt, and he threw a towel earlier too that no one slipped on. My neighbor is Lucius Allen, who had slipped on.
I remember Milwaukee Bucks cost the Bucks a championship, basically, right?
Yeah. And so I don't know about you, but whenever I'm in a gym and I see a towel on the floor or something on the ground, I'm picking that up and making sure no one slips on it. But at any rate, I don't want to take. I know it's late on the East Coast, but what do you think about Game 7? Are we gonna have a game for Game 7, or is it gonna turn into leads?
I think we will, and I think one of the important parts of this evening that we really haven't mentioned a whole lot of. We did a little bit. We alluded to Michael Conley. He had 13 points, 5 assists, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 6 on threes. He's the adult in the room, right? So, I'm going to predict that Anthony Edwards is going to play about between 40 and 42 minutes in Game 7. He's 22 years old, so they can, run the treads right off of his tires. And having Conley in there when Ant sits is going to be a big boost. That's something that they missed in Game 5, right? They could have really used him. And I don't know what you think, Nick, but he looked really healthy tonight, the way he was moving around the court on that sore Achilles. So if they can keep him healthy, I'm always going to say that the home team is favored, but this has been a wild series. And it would not surprise me if Minnesota ended up winning a third game in Denver.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the other end of the Conley feeling for a while here about how he's playing and how vital he is. But you certainly could use, game 5 and game 6 as a good indicator. I mean, if you take a starter off of a team, that's going to be rough, no matter who that starter is, and that you could tell that for sure. Would he have been the difference maker in game 5? I don't know, but certainly I was watching for those threes. He's not always the most consistent 3-point shooter out there like that. And to see him knock down 3 of 6 was a really important factor to give them that balance, and they could rely on him. So he looked good, and but that's good. I don't want these teams to have any injury issues to speak of. I want teams going at each other.
Yeah, and I was a little afraid when Ant-Man took that hard fall on his back and he was slow to get up. You never want to see guys injured. I hope. We talked about Jamal and his arm. I hope his arm is okay, because he's been as clutch for Denver over the last couple of years as any player. You remember the numbers he put up in the finals last year against the Miami Heat. And he's even Ant-Man called him one of the best closers in the NBA. So, game 7 is going to be fun. I tell all my friends, don't call me, don't text me. It's game 7. I'll call you after.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll see if we'll communicate a little bit, maybe.
Yes,
but
we'll be texting. Sure.
We'll keep it focused. But Mark, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. No matter if it's in person, whatever, on thumbs. And great insights as always. When do we get to see you next on the TV?
You know what? Mike Breen's crew has it from here on in. Whether it's game 7. If the Knicks, as I understand it, if the Knicks Pacers series goes to a game 7, then I believe Turner will have Denver and Minnesota game 7. But if there's just one game 7, then it'll be Breen, JJ, and Doris.
Wow! So is that gonna be Turner's swan song gets to be a game 7? Perhaps.
Wow, man, who knows, man? Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, the television negotiations are another long subject, and we'll talk about that another time. But
for sure.
Yeah. Well, our partners at TNT do a great job. I mean, that show is iconic, right? That studio show. I mean, Charles and Kenny and Nick. You and I are old enough to remember when it was just the 3 of them before Shaq, right? It was just the 3 of those guys. And
and Ernie is the best. Breen is the best. If there has to be anybody that's going to take your spot at half court to call the game, I guess Breen. You have to say Breen. Sure. But other than that, you have to be out there, and you better be on those courts. I guess we're going to see you at Summer League, probably, right?
I'll be at the California Classic in Sacramento in early July, around July 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then in Las Vegas after that. So I love Summer League. Nick, we speak the same language, Coach. We speak basketball, right? I mean, I'm a junkie. I don't golf. I get my workout in the morning, and then I go to either Stan Remy or Ronnie Taylor's gym here in Miami. I went and watched a bunch of NBA prospects work out in Los Angeles recently at Chris Johnson's gym. Saw the kid from Kentucky and the kid from Colorado work out, and Dillingham and what is it, KJ? I forget the other kid from Colorado, but so I don't golf, man. I'm a basketball junkie, so that's what I'll be doing all summer until Summer League. Yeah,
love it. Well, hope to see you soon. And Mark, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Hit me anytime, man. We'll do it again.
All right, awesome. You got it. Take care.
You got it. See you.
All righty. So that was Mark Jones of ESPN. And if you don't, you got to make sure when he's calling a game that you are listening and watching, because he's the kind of guy that has the basketball mind too, which is really great that as we progressed through the eras of NBA, the IQ, the basketball IQ of the play-by-play guys has just continued to go up and up and up. And so it makes the watching experience that much better. So really thrilled to have Mark come on the show, and a friend of the breakdown. He's been on the show before. Great to have him live. And great to have you guys here. So I don't know if Combo is going to flip side in here, but we should be having another guest coming on sooner than later. I believe I sent over the link to them. Yeah. Let me just tell him. Okay. So, and then don't forget super chats. If you have any questions, you want to do it. Oh my goodness. And just speaking of the devil, let's bring in Chip Clark, college referee, friend of the breakdown, best friend of the breakdown, and someone who's going to talk a little bit about what's going on with this game. Chip, how are you today?
Hey, man, I'm great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. We got you.
Oh, man, sorry about that. Coming in hot.
So I got my levels going. But anyway, fascinating, interesting. Hard. I wouldn't have put 45-point blowout on my bingo card this morning. But what were your first impressions?
Man, what a performance, man. So I was over on IG Live watching the whole game with my buddies Milt and Ish, and breaking down some plays, breaking down the game a little bit. And man, the first thing that stuck out to me is the response right after Denver came out with a quick little start right after that timeout. But then the way that Minnesota settled in, and I was really impressed with their defense tonight. Sure, Denver missed a lot of open shots, but I think you got to give Minnesota credit. Jokic wasn't catching the ball deep in the paint like he normally does. You know, we talked a little bit about those 5-footers and in that he got a lot of in game 5, and they just weren't there as much tonight as in game 5. He was catching it 10, 15 feet from the basket, and that was kudos to Minnesota for pushing it out that far. So I was really impressed with Minnesota's defense tonight. I really was. That was one of the biggest things that stuck out to me. And goodness, they were shooting the rock pretty well, huh?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, listen, once you get that 20-0 run, any three after that is going to feel pretty easy to make. And then, like you said, on the other side, it's harder. You start to press really quickly. And I don't want to even make it sound like Denver is mentally weak as a team. But it's an avalanche, and it's natural. And we've seen them, in game 2, the same thing kind of happened where offensively for the Nuggets, they just weren't in sync and they fell apart. And you have to give equal credit to the defense, but then also some issues with what they were doing and how they were executing. You have to be better than that. And you can't just settle. Even someone had said on Twitter when they responded, there were some good threes, but sometimes even when you're open for three, it's not a good three, because they're on a 10 or 12-0 run. A quick 3-point shot from Aaron Gordon in the corner, even if he's got some space, is not the right idea. You better get in the paint first if you're going to shoot a three, right? And then maybe finish the shot at the bucket or something. Get a foul, do something else. Maybe even and this gets into your realm as a ref. Maybe take a hard foul, on Anthony Edwards. Knock him down a little bit. You could knock somebody down without being flagrant, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like this would the Michael Porter Jr. foul on Ant that put him on his tailbone. Obviously all of us are holding our breath in that moment because nobody wants to see a star player go down. But that was a good contest. It wasn't even a hard foul necessarily. It was just an A to B, but it was while he was in a vulnerable position, and so he got clipped when he was in the air. But on other drives to the basket, you can take a hard foul on the wrist, on the arm, stuff like that. Just to kind of send a message without it being flagrant. That's for sure.
And believe me, when I mentioned that, I'm like, you better not do it while he's in the air. Like that.
No.
He's dribbling up the court. You could take it. They maybe trap and then you take it one there near the half court, something like that. Just to, mix it up. You throw somebody in there. Well, if you did that with somebody who hasn't played much, then you might get a flagrant because they're like, this is the goon squad they're throwing in there.
Exactly.
You're not old enough to remember, like Greg Kite on the Celtics used to be that
guy. Yeah.
And he literally was 6 fouls. They let him in there. They beat on Kareem. He probably would beat on Kareem 8 or 9 times, but they called him for the 5 fouls. And, he get a couple extra shots in there. And then, see if they can get Kareem off his game. So, we're a long way from that era, and I feel like the coaching has kind of forgotten that, even though Malone was from, raised in that era with his dad. So, that might be something that needs to be looked at because in the modern era, when the teams get rolling, there isn't a lot you can do. The only thing that I always say is you better hit some threes on your own side because sometimes, you get a hand up, you're making them work, and they just start pouring in, and there isn't anything you're doing defensively. You just simply have to try and match a little bit with on the other end. But how big do you think it was at the end of the half where they get a stop down 17 and then they just throw the ball away and let them get a tip in to make it 19 again? Like, do you feel like that was a big turning point?
Yeah, because we were even talking on the live stream that we were doing that we were talking about how that last minute is going to be really crucial to see how the second half plays out. And you kind of felt like that was a tipping point in my mind. I was saying if Denver could somehow get it inside 15, I really like their chances in the second half. they'll have a little bit of momentum, stuff like that. But when they turned the ball over, then Minnesota misses that bucket, but Jaden McDaniels is right there for the putback. That just kind of, you felt like it maybe took a little wind out of the sails for Denver, when on a night that Denver really couldn't do anything right. They just couldn't. And I think midway through the fourth quarter, and I keep kind of going back to this, but midway through the fourth quarter, I was looking up stats, and I think at that point, Denver had 30 points in the paint compared to Game 5 where they finished with 62 points in the paint.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a big difference, man. Murray had a really off night tonight. He wasn't getting to the basket as well. Credit Minnesota's defense in a lot of those cases as well. But back to your point, man, they could not get anything going. And you looked at some of the offensive sets they were running to kind of, combat what Minnesota was doing. And they just couldn't find it. They just couldn't.
And it's almost like someone made a video explaining what Minnesota was doing properly on defense, and that they went away from that for no reason.
Yeah,
and they went back to it, and they stuck with it, which was having Cat on Rudy, and then having
on Jokic,
under the basket, and then having Gobert float.
Yeah,
that worked really well all series long. And then in Game 5, they got a little too clever for themselves, and they started putting Rudy back on Jokic, and he would go to work. So,
but tonight they started with Rudy on Jokic again.
They did?
Yeah. There was a few possessions at the start. In fact, Rudy had some good possessions against Jokic early in the game. However, once they started putting Cat on, they started having even more success because you can't move Cat as easily as you can move Rudy. And Rudy was allowing him in Game 5 to catch it so deep in the lane. But I was actually encouraged. I even mentioned it on the live stream. It's like, I was encouraged with the way Rudy was playing Jokic early in the game in that matchup. And because they did have that matchup going, and then they switched it up a little bit. And I think maybe throwing some different looks kind of helped out their calls tonight.
That is true. I can picture that a little bit now in my mind's eye in the very beginning, a couple of possessions where, Jokic got in the paint and then didn't finish. And, all that is Rudy's length. So, yes, I do remember that. I do feel like it might have been a switch on a couple of those where they ran the Gordon ball screen for Jokic early to get that switch of Rudy onto Jokic. Mm-hmm. And he brought it this time. I mean, I'm sure he heard all the criticism of him, mainly from me.
Yeah.
And the response tends to be like, well, nobody can guard him. So why are you criticizing, Rudy specifically? Well, I'm like, well, it's not even that. First of all, he's Defensive Player of the Year, but second of all, it's not even that he's not that he's getting scored on. He's playing good defense. It's that he lets Jokic get to the rim or right into the restricted area way too easily. And for some reason, it's hard for me to fathom. Cat doesn't do that. Cat stands him up better, keeps him farther out, several feet farther, and makes those shots a little bit farther, which is the difference here. Because again, if Rudy lets him that close, short of blocking the shot, it's not really going to matter what he does. Although I will say, there were a couple where he did pressure and Jokic faltered. He looked like he didn't want to have any part of that. So again, credit to everybody around the Minnesota roster for doing that and playing it better. All I know is that for that big stretch though, they had Cat on him and Rudy floated. And Rudy was doing a lot of damage, forwarding shots. People weren't even going to try and take it. That one round going around, and then I don't want to. You two, somebody shoot it. I don't want to shoot over. So, yeah.
Well, and there was a few possessions where Minnesota got a switch, and got a switch to get Ant on Jokic. So, Denver, ran some sets that got the switch to get Ant on Jokic, and you just knew when Jokic had it there, and Ant's a pretty good defender. But on those where the help is a little too far away, Cat's on the other side of the lane, like outside the lane, you knew Jokic was just going to take him to the rack, and he did on a couple of those possessions. But they didn't get that very often. To Minnesota's credit, they didn't allow that switch to happen very often. So.
Right, absolutely. And what we can in the comments, we can leave the North Korea comments out of there. I know it's funny. I don't know. Have you seen the awful coaching guy?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
And I had to give him a piece of my mind the other day. But I will. Let me just say this: for whatever I might think or not think of the analysis that guy does, is extremely entertaining.
It is entertaining.
Yeah. So, Chip, if you don't mind, we have a friend of the breakdown. Chris is going to join us, who's been part of the shows before. I'm not sure if you've ever crossed paths before.
Yeah, we have. Man.
Hey,
what's up, Chris, it's good to see you, bro.
It's good to see you. How's it going?
The gang's all back. So let's let's get Chris. Give us something that we haven't thought of yet, or I don't know if you can do that. But I don't want to throw you out there. But let's give us something that we can chew on here that would give us some reason that maybe Denver has any hope. Game 7.
Oh, Denver has any hope? Well, I think they have a pretty good chance of winning, just based off their experience. The Nuggets, not the Nuggets, the Wolves have shown that their inexperience at times can, the pressure can get to them, especially after the first 2 wins that they had. They said it on the broadcast. The media, the 3 days off, kind of got to their head. Maybe they've learned from that lesson, but if the game is close, I think you have to lean towards the Nuggets just because they've been there before. They have the best player. But yeah, I just have to go with the home team.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
I hear you. And the home team wins. I think we talked about this, Mark Jones, earlier. It used to be 80% of the time, game 7s easily, maybe higher. And then anecdotally for me, it feels like in the modern era with the 3-point shot, it's gone down. Teams have won game 7s on the road a little more than normal. But yes, you got to throw in the factor. By the way, and Rudy's got experience, Conley's got experience. So it's not like they're completely inexperienced. But I am actually really excited. I want to hear what your take on this is to see Anthony Edwards in a game 7. I think this might be the moment.
But it could be another situation like, what was it, game 5? No, it was a game 4. Game 4, he's the only one that showed up and everyone else were duds, right? It could be a situation like that where he's playing well, but who else is going to step up for them? Do you think Jaden McDaniels is going to hit threes in the corner in a game 7, right? Those are the plays that they're going to need to win that game. And on the road it's a tall task. I haven't seen it yet, so it's we'll just see.
Right? Yeah, it was game 4. He had 44 points and was unstoppable, and yet the Nuggets had control of that. And I thought it was interesting because the other strategy they were using was to double Anthony Edwards every single time he touched the ball, or definitely show somebody hovering right near him. And Edwards was giving the ball. I think I'm sure what the Minnesota coaching staff told him was, you're giving the ball up too early, too easily. See if you can attack. And he certainly had one on a dunk or a layup to the basket. Maybe it was a layup with a lot of contact they didn't call. That was pretty indicative. And then he had that 3 in the corner that was insane. Mm-hmm. But they were on their way to him, and they were showing him the 2. And I swear, in the other games, he would have been already trying to find a pass out of there, and instead just lit him up. So
that's funny you mentioned that. Stuff. I think Halliburton is doing the same thing. He's getting rid of the ball too early.
Interesting. Oh, okay. You want to take a left turn there?
After the past game, yeah.
Well, now I got a picture of the Halliburton coming around and getting those doubles. Yeah. This is what we're living in, right? And Chip, you talked to me about this as well, as far as with the defensive rules the way they are, and with the skill of the offensive player, it doesn't seem like it's possible to allow one-on-one play from that level of player anymore.
It's tough. It's tough. It's certainly tough because you got to keep them in front. You know what I mean? So and with as shifty as some of the guards are these days, I know, another player in that series, Jalen Brunson, he's pretty shifty. He can find his way into spots on the floor and even in front of defenders, to get them behind him and put him in jail, that it makes it very, very difficult to maintain legal position on him, when you're guarding him. So same thing with Halliburton, So I think that you should see more guards take advantage of that. And when I say take advantage of it, for those of you listening, I'm not saying try to game the rules or anything like that, or try to really. I'm just saying whatever's allowed. You know what I mean? Do that. I know I'm not saying try to foul bait or this, that, and the other. I'm just saying there's ways to put the defense in jail and really give yourselves an upper hand without trying to foul bait or anything like that. But heck, even if they are trying to foul bait, I think that a lot of us, all 3 of us on here, would probably agree that we don't like seeing foul baiters, where they go in and seek out contact and then immediately just try to throw up a shot that, we know that they're not actually trying to shoot. They're just trying to get to the line. Mm-hmm. So I don't think any of us like that, but those aren't the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about those situations where you can really put the defense at a disadvantage and open up the floor, which I think is possible for Halliburton and stuff like that. So and
the answer to that is you're going to have to bring a second defender, and then that's that's when you're going to get the kind of the beautiful ball movement, right? And we're starting to see a little bit more of that, and hopefully that will continue to, inspire, even the lower levels. Whereas, we're going to start seeing more, like, I think at some point in the lower levels, there might be a shunning of the ISO ball and having one guy get that kind of spotlight. But in reality, when you watch how much gravity that you can pull toward them, and then like that becomes your advantage, right? Because remember, offense is just trying to gain the advantage, right? And then don't give it up with a couple of different passes. So you could use that now, and I know high school players these days who are that good. And you can encourage that and find ways in certain areas and make it more. It's not just like you're saying, throwing the ball out there, letting them play. No, you can understand now angles and spacing of where to get them in that situation. And then once the doubles come and once the defense gets compromised, now we get the ball moving around. Everyone's part of it. That's exciting.
Absolutely. And we saw, in my opinion, earlier in the game, when the game was still a lot closer tonight, we saw a lot more ball movement from Minnesota than we've seen in the last few games. You know what I mean? I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah. And they were ready, like that. They knew exactly, like they had a lot more of a focus offensively. I think I might be more impressed with their offense tonight, honestly, than the defense. Now, speaking of that kind of style, the Celtics are probably the poster children for this like ISO thing and trying to create it. And Chris, you're shaking your head. I'm thinking that like a coach like Tibbs must be watching that, the stagnant that, and being like just drooling and can't wait to play them.
Yeah. Just Tibbs is probably the best coach to coach against the style of play that the Celtics play, just based off his principles and just the physicality that they play with. Like, it's not a recipe for success for the Celtics at all. And they're off for the talent that they have on that team and the stretches that they go through in games, especially with the teams that they played so far that's been like riddled with injuries. It doesn't make any sense for them. Both of those series should have been sweeps, but it's those times where the offense just Tatum dribbles the ball up, uses 22 seconds of the shot clock, and then does a step back or sidestep three, and then the team gets in transition and score. Like, I'm so tired of it, but it is what it is at this point with them. I don't know what else to say.
Well, we have our first super chat. Let's bring this one on from Best Friend of the Breakdown, Andrew Zhu. Thank you so much, Andrew. You're always there for every show of ours. Really, really appreciate it. Great to have you on, and always great to see. This makes me feel nice to know that you're out there and you're just always watching these shows. So thank you so much. And this will be a good one we can throw to Chip as well. The question here is: since WNBA viewership is growing, you should do a breakdown on Caitlin Clark's struggles in adjusting to the W. What is her long-term role in the team? Probably not heliocentric like at Iowa. I watched some of the first game, and she got a couple quick fouls. And, Chip, I'm sure you've seen it where, like, a player like that gets a couple fouls and then they get yanked out of the game early. And that tends to disrupt the rest of the game, right? It's not a wild take, right?
That's not a wild take at all. No. And so, like, from an officiating perspective, and here's the thing, I've got to be 100% real with you. I did not see those two foul calls. I haven't seen those yet. So you guys, if you have, tell me what your thoughts on them are. All I'm going to say is this, like, it absolutely going into a game, first game of the season, right? The officials definitely want to set the tone from a standpoint of trying to establish flow to the game. In a rookie season campaign, like, I'm not saying that this is top of their mind, but a rookie debut or something like that with somebody star power like Caitlin Clark, they don't want to call early fouls on them and put them in foul trouble and send them to the bench. They don't want to do that. So I've heard some comments saying that they were pretty weak foul calls on her early. And since I haven't seen it, I can't comment on it. But I just know that the threshold for illegal contact should be a little bit higher in those situations to start the game, to start a season. Heck, this is the first game of the season, right? That was. So, but what I will say is, like, I don't know if y'all saw Pat McAfee's comments on it where where he called out the ref by name and called him a bunch of insults and names and stuff like that. But that's uncalled for. The NBA refs actually put out a tweet about it. I put out a tweet about it. Got a lot of respect for Pat McAfee. I really am a big fan, but that was uncalled for. And we officials understand that and this is not soft in calling it out. That's what I said in my tweet, right? It's not soft in calling this out. Officials understand that criticism from fans, from media, from all that stuff is part of it. It's part of the gig, man. We get that, But getting called out by name and insulted like that, and getting called names like that on a show like Pat McAfee's, like, yeah, that was pretty uncalled for. So I disagreed with him on that. But yeah, back to your question, like, oh, good, you got it. Let's take a look at it.
Okay.
I want to see these.
Okay, so here it is.
Is this the first foul?
Let me turn off the thing. This is the first foul.
Okay.
I believe this is the first foul. This is the second foul. Gosh darn it! Let me do the first.
That's all right. Yeah,
I tried number one. Hang on. Let me do it. We might as well get it in order. That way we'll see exactly. Let's see. Where's number one? Is it number one? Here we go. Okay, so here's number one. But where now? I got to find number one.
You got the same one.
It is.
Yeah,
823.
Oh, so there must be a weird glitch with what I'm using because I'm selecting number one, but it's showing number two. All right, let me do it one more time.
Yeah, I definitely want to see these.
Hey, live show. All right, I'm hitting number one. Share. Okay, this is it, right? Here we go. This should be number one. Okay, so here it is in open court. Can you see this?
Yep, I can see it.
Turn off the volume. So, not a lot, but she reaches in. But yeah, it's kind of weak. What do you think?
I'm trying to see. I'm looking at the slot to see if she had a double whistle on this.
All right, I'll let it play out.
No, She didn't have a whistle.
First one.
Yep. So I mean, like that. If we're just gonna be straight up, like I think that was one you could probably play through a little bit. That early in the game just to establish the flow. But again, the lead official on that play has a better angle than we do from this position. You know what I mean? They would have probably been able to see if there was a slap on the arm. And again, is this the second one?
Yeah, here she is. Here's the second one. And then you play. I'll let it play first. Okay, now let's do this one more time. Loose ball.
Those calls are so bang bang.
The left arm is provocative. You can see it gets on her shoulder a little bit, so she let that left arm get a little bit loose.
So yeah, and it's that, and it's the fact that here let it play. Yeah, I mean, so the left arm is definitely provocative on that play, and when the lead sees that arm kind of wrap around and is able to see the hand portion of it, and see that it makes the player kind of bring down the ball as well. They're going to be dribbling anyway, but that one I agree with a little bit more than the first one. And I'm not even saying the first one was wrong. I'm just saying it's one of those where you want to try to establish a good flow to the game and not put ticky-tack fouls on people that early. I'm not even saying that's what happened, but that definitely is one of those things where you look at it and you say, okay, that second one, I can see why that one was called. And it was probably just exasperated by the fact that first one was called is the reason, and the fact that one sent her to the bench. So, but yeah, it's tough.
Right. And for what it's worth, I'll just say that I think that, give Caitlin Clark a few games, to get comfortable. They literally had she probably had 10 days of training camp or maybe, a couple weeks, you know what I mean? Versus like playing at Iowa where she had been there and had known everybody. So, her kind of game is predicated on chemistry and knowing the players and knowing when they like to get the ball. Because remember, in my mind, passing is her best part of the game. I don't even know if we're going to see her scoring huge numbers, but she should be throwing dimes everywhere. That's going to take some time. So she might need another 9 games to get comfortable, but I have no doubt that she's going to be awesome.
No doubt that she's going to be awesome. It takes some time to adjust. Tonight, they got the brakes beat off of them again. I think it was like 102-66 is what I saw. She only had 9 points. Rough night for her. She doesn't have a lot of supporting cast around her on that team either. So it's going to be a trying time early. Hopefully they'll be able to figure some things out though, and we can see some of the Caitlin Clark we got to see in college. So, but I'm excited. I think the struggles are not going to last as long as some might think. There is going to be an adjustment period though.
For sure. Yeah. Chris, do you have any takes? Have you been watching her a little bit?
No, I haven't been able to watch any full games there. It's just a little highlights here and there.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully I'll even do some videos. I mean, it's hard. It's sometimes the WNBA content I do, doesn't get as much viewership, but I do find like a lot of times they're awesome content to do, and it's really fun. Yeah. So I'll make sure to sneak some in there this summer for sure, and try and there's other players out there too in the WNBA.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
So And there's more and more interest, I think, year over year. So this will probably be the beginning of maybe like the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson era in the late 70s for the NBA, where we're getting, more of the talent coming in and more interest. I think that will carry over. I'm excited about it.
I'll say this one last thing too, is like, I admittedly hadn't watched much NBA up until like a few years ago. And I actually got selected to do the stats during their bubble season during COVID down in Bradenton, Florida. So I would drive down and I would sit there and I would do like 3 WNBA games in a row, do the stats for it, the live stats. And so I got to see a bunch of basketball in those, few months during that bubble season for the WNBA. And I really enjoyed it, man. It was fun to watch them.
I had a chance to watch. I had a buddy who does the stats for the Sparks. At least he did a few years ago, and he let me sit behind them while they were doing it, and it was insane. Like I don't know anyone who understands exactly how intense that is. And you're doing it. You do it for the Orlando Magic as well, right? Yeah,
I do it for the Orlando Magic, and I'm telling you, like, being an official is one of the hardest gigs in basketball, right? Being a referee, there is more pressure as a statistician doing live stats for the game, because these players, their contracts depend on these stats. Everything has to be literally perfect. You've got a headset on, you're talking to your team of 4. You got one guy with a headset that is talking to our team and talking to Secaucus at the same time while reviewing game film and reviewing all of our stats that we've put in. And the fact that you could have a couple turnovers in a row and you're literally statting 7 things within a 10-second period. Like, it's just unbelievably stressful and high pressure situation. It's crazy. You wouldn't think that, but being a statistician is pretty nuts.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. And, at the very least, sometimes if there's a mistake, whatever, you can then correct it and make sure it gets, entered in maybe later, I think, right? I've seen that.
Yeah. We can always, and there's time during every timeout, if there's a player or 2 we need to take a look at, we throw it up on the monitor. Usually we take a couple of looks at it together as a team. Then we'll ask Secaucus, hey, do you agree with this? They'll say yes or no. Here's why. Stuff like that, and then we'll change the stat and get it right. So, there's a lot of things that go on in a basketball game that are hard to see from the scores table. So it's especially when you got players coming in to check in the game and they're standing up right in front of you, and you're having to move around to see them. So yeah, it's pretty tough, man. It's tough, but we got a great team. A lot of these NBA teams have great stats teams that do a good job, and I actually enjoy working with the people in Secaucus too. Whenever we work with them and to get these stats right, it's pretty fun.
For sure. Well, it's getting late in the game here for you guys on the East Coast, so I think we'll start to wrap this up. But what do we? Let's get a little round around the table here. What do we think? Who's going to win Game 7, Chris?
I just got to go with the home team. I think the bench will probably play a little bit better. Role players will play a little bit better. Jamal Murray won't play like he did tonight.
Right.
You're right about that.
Yeah, I gotta go lean towards
right. Yeah, he'll be better.
Yeah.
All right, so you're gonna go with Denver at home, Chip.
Yeah.
Everything inside of me really is going Denver at home in Game 7, but you heard it here first. I'm going to go with Minnesota in Game 7. And I'm going to go with a game winner.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm going to go with the game winner from Ant.
Okay.
And
is it going to bounce on the brim 5 times before going in, or just
it's going to be the Jordan fadeaway.
Wow.
And it's just going to be poetic. It's going to be like freaking game over, silence the Denver crowd. It's over.
It's getting late for you guys, but we got someone else to bring on the show. We got a very special guest to bring in who I don't know exactly the story, but he got here just in time, so we'll give him a little segment here. But let's welcome on Combo to the show.
Hey, Combo.
Hey.
What's up, guys? Tell me about the game, because I was in a recording for a podcast in New York City.
The game you were?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we thought you were already asleep, bro.
No. I was working. So tell me about it. What's your guys' biggest takeaway? I'm interviewing you guys now.
All right. I'll say this. It was an avalanche. It's actually started out, the first 7 or 8 possessions looked like it was going to be a blowout for the Nuggets. And then they called timeout, and then they gave them what was that stuff in the halftime, the special water that they all drink?
Michael's secret stuff from Space Jam?
Yeah, which is probably like, PED or something. But anyway, they gave him that, and then they come out and literally just
like a 20-0 run. It was like a 20-0 run.
20-0 run, and that it was over. Even if they tried to hang on a little bit in the second quarter, a little bit, it was over. They were shell shocked. It was over, by halftime.
Denver couldn't do anything right. They couldn't get shots to fall. Just credit Minnesota's defense, but Denver also missed some wide open shots. They were off tonight.
Chris, what do you think is the reason why like one game looks so different from the other? Do you feel like it's especially like that this year? Like it feels like one game some team is just like the way better team, and then the next game it's like a 60-point swing. Why is that this year?
That's a good question.
I only ask the good questions, Chris.
It's
I didn't do a combo today. That's the best version.
I don't want to say it's the officiating. I think that does play a part with how the games start, though, and the rhythm of the game. Like the first two games of the series, Minnesota was able to impose their will physically, especially defensively, and the Nuggets did make some adjustments, but the calls that they weren't calling in games 1 and 2, they were calling in games 3 to 5. So that kind of shifted the way that Minnesota was playing. And I think that's what affected the kind of the lopsided scores. Also, Jamal Murray's health, he had 3 days off after game 2, and is it that big of a surprise? He had like a really good game in game 3 and game 4. So I think a lot of things play into it, but for this series in particular, I think it's the start of the games and how they're officiated can determine the rhythm of the game. And if it's more physical, I think that lends towards Minnesota. And like and they play when they're not. I kind of noticed that when they're not calling stuff, they kind of play with more energy in a sense. Like they're more excited, like they're moving around, bouncing around. They're not afraid like, oh, this is going to get called for a foul.
Well, how much of that is just their energy is setting the tone, right? That could be part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Now, Chip, does that resonate with you? Like as a ref, like the energy might dictate the way you call it?
Yeah, Chip, let me ask you this. Like if I'm pressuring somebody full court and I'm kind of fouling them right out the gate, it's hard to call like 5 fouls in a row on me, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like we're we're not going to call 5 fouls in a row on you for the same thing. Like that's just not going to happen.
Right.
Like, so, I mean, like I'm talking about in like quick succession, you know what I mean? For this. So like if, and not that we're completely opposed to it, but it's like, especially if it's the same player, like 2 or 3 times in a row or whatever, you're hoping that the first time you call that first one that they learn their lesson, and you've set the tone with it or whatever. And so they learn their lesson. They're not impeding freedom of movement. They're not affecting rhythm, balance, speed, and quickness of the dribbler. Like you hope they learn their lesson. If they come out and do it the next possession, you've seen it a couple times these playoffs. Boom, they'll get it right there on the next possession. And they'll call back-to-back fouls. You've seen it a few times in the playoffs. Usually that you don't have to worry about it after that. Usually they're like, all right, they get taken out of the game. The next guy comes in, they don't do that same thing. So usually it course corrects itself if you got a couple of quick ones and you don't have to get to 3, 4, 5. But no ref wants to call 5 fouls for the same exact thing in quick succession. But I do have to ask Chris, if I wasn't on the show tonight, would you have said, yes, it was because of the officials?
Well, I don't want to say it's because of the officials specifically.
I know. I knew what you meant, bro. I knew what you meant. But you're absolutely right about some things too. It's like, it's not lost on officials that the way we start out games sets the tone for the game.
Exactly.
And there's not a doubt in my mind that going into game 3, those officials knew they had to tighten it up a little bit because it was the freaking wild, wild west in game 2. And you just can't let that continue. No matter how exciting it was to watch. As an outside fan of the NBA in general, it was exciting to see the swarming defense, a little bit of the physicality, the old days back in there, but it just led to chaos. And I know we talked about earlier, Murray, the game 3 that he had, you talked about that, Chris. I think a lot of that has to do with the rest, but I think a lot of it was a breath of fresh air after he acted the fool in game 2. Yeah. He sees he's not getting suspended. It's like, all right, I need to settle down. I've got some rest. Let's just get back to work. And he had a great game 3 through 5. Fell flat tonight. But yeah, I mean, I expect him to be back in game 7.
And it's
How about
interesting.
waiting for the next question?
Oh, Chip, I got a real basketball question for you. So
I want to hear. Can I hear Chris? Can I hear what Chris was about to say real quick,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
hit me
go
up?
I was just gonna say, games 3 to 5. Murray was the standout in game 3. Gordon was the standout in game 4, and then we all know what Jokic did the other day. So it's like, who's gonna do it for this game 7, right?
Yep, that's a great point.
I think Jokic takes over because I think the great guys do it. But Chip, if I Euro and then I jump on the right leg, how long could I stay there on the right leg for?
All right, so let's say your gather foot is your right foot, or let's say your gather foot is your left foot. You're gathering the ball with your left foot on the floor.
Yep. Hop.
You Euro to your right step.
And how long could I stay there on one leg?
Until the shot clock runs out.
Oh, really?
Or there's a couple other possibilities.
Oh, I mean, yeah, like you basically what the question or the answer that I have is you can literally stand on that leg as long as you can. Like you could stand on that leg, or you could put your other foot down. You can pivot on that foot. You can do whatever you want because that's step 1 after the gather.
I feel like there's probably some moves that we're missing out on, right? That we
saw the highlights. I don't remember what level it was. The guy goes and does it, and the guy flies by, and he's just standing on that one leg for. And then he doesn't jump and bangs it in. Who was that?
That's the Simpson. He played for Michigan, I believe.
And that
something
was
Simpson.
Oh, you're talking about the hook shot guy?
No.
This really short guy.
He plays in the G League.
I think.
I have seen a player in the G League do it multiple.
Yeah, he's also always in summer league, but he has a lot of hook shots.
Yeah, that's right. But you can't do that. You have a 3-second possibility in the lane. We can't do it there. If it's college, it's a 5-second closely guarded issue.
Yep.
I'm well versed on the answer for this one.
Oh yeah, I was thinking we're going strictly NBA on this, but yes, if you're in the lane, you can't stand there for longer than 3 seconds. But the whole point of my answer of saying until the shot clock runs out is the same as the 3-second counter, same as the 5-second counter. You can stand there as long as you want with that, unless there's somebody closely guarding you, or there's a 3-second count going on.
Yeah, or I guess in theory you could do the Euro in the backcourt, and you have 8 seconds to get.
There you go. And if you do that Euro outside of the lane in the front court, you can literally stand on that leg as long as you want. You can put the other foot back down. You can pivot on that one that you stopped on. So yeah, your step 1 after your gather is your pivot foot.
Is it true?
And if you come to a stop.
I learned this as a kid that like if you're in the post and you're making a move towards the rim, you don't get 3 seconds. Like as long as you're attacking, right?
As long as it is imminent, a shot is imminent, and you're attacking the basket. Yes, then there's the 3-second count is suspended. Then
got you. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And if you stop and then pivot back, and then you're looking to pass, and then you pass out of it, the count starts back up, and then you're liable to be called for 3 seconds. We saw a defensive 3 seconds tonight.
We did, and I think it was on Conley maybe, and he wasn't happy about it.
I thought it was on Rudy, but I didn't go back and look. We were talking about something else. I know Rudy was the one arguing with the officials about it, and I know Rudy was very conscious about getting out of the lane right after that and cleansing himself. Which, by the way, for those of you watching, for you to cleanse yourself of the lane, defense or offense in the NBA, you have to take 2 steps, like both feet have to touch outside of the lane before you can step back in.
Coach Nick, has any of your opinions changed about either team after watching this game?
Yeah. I mean, I think my opinion on the coaching of Minnesota has changed drastically because I didn't like what they were doing strategically in those 3 games they lost. And they come out and they stick to – I got to check. Chip was telling me that they had Gobert on Jokic to start, but all I know is that, like, the big stretch they had, as far as I could tell in my mind's eye, I could see it was – they did it properly, which was Cat on Jokic and Rudy floating behind, and that was working really well for them. There was no reason to go away from that in Game 5, and they did. They went away from it for no reason that I can understand. And then also offensively, the things they did – we talked about this in the beginning with Mark – was I might. The question is, how much of a sadist am I? Am I going to go watch every single half-court possession that they've ran in the first 6 games because I want to see if they ran this? It might even be like an Iverson cut for Conley to the left wing, and then an inside ball screen by Cat to force a switch, and then Cat would go down low and attack. I don't remember seeing that before, and that's a great little wrinkle. And then they got him attacking So that was really important. And then as soon as the double came, they were ready. They had good spacing. The ball moved. There wasn't an indecision. So that was really a great example of coaching. Like, we're going to run this. We're going to show you how to do it. And they did it. And then the other thing was, I think that they told Anthony Edwards, stop passing the ball so early when they're showing a double at you or a loose double at you. See what you can create first. And he was doing that more. And that was, and listen, what did he end up with? 27? Yeah.
Do you think they would have been as comfortable doubling down on Jokic when he catches the ball in the paint the few times that they did if Denver was hitting the threes? I think they felt
the game on, for sure. And they like, please, Brown, shoot some more.
I think they felt at liberty to double down as much as they could in those situations, and leave their man, not too far away, but like leave their man open because they just couldn't hit anything tonight, man.
Yeah,
absolutely. You can see it. Everybody, listen. If you're going to see Murray being shook a little bit, imagine how Justin Holiday must have felt. Goes down the line. Because he had a layup, right, that got blocked at the rim.
I don't even know why he went up for that one. Like,
I don't either.
McDaniels was
like two-hand block
on the back
early, and so Holiday had to dribble like twice before, and you're like, this doesn't feel good. It didn't feel good.
Hey, Chris, I was going to ask you and Combo too. I know you didn't watch tonight, but like, what do you think? So just to let you know, like tonight, Cat, I think he finished with like 10 points, was 0 for 4 from 3. How important do you think the 3 ball for Cat is going to need to be in Game 7 for them to have a chance to win that game?
I think it's really important.
I think he needs to
hit them early. If he's hitting them early, I think that's going to be a really good start for them. They have to get off to a good start. If they don't get off to a good start with Cat hitting those threes and stuff, because you can always rely on Ant at the end of those games, but Cat not so much. But I really think Cat needs to get going. Was it Game 2? He was hitting those threes in the first quarter. It was either Game 2 or Game 1, where he got off to a really good start and they just blew him out. I think he needs to hit him early.
I think it creates a lot of problems. If he's hitting early, it creates a lot of problems for Denver.
Yeah. So, and I'm wondering if when the Cat gets the ball, if they're going to try and force a switch and like KCP is on Cat in the post, are they going to double so quickly? Maybe they let KCP
like they did tonight.
Or they'll just be better at that. I mean, I think like my mind's eye, they were rotating and saying, fine, we're going to let who are they going to let shoot it on that team? Who hit him today?
McDaniels in the corner.
No question. That was part of the game plan. Like, let him shoot it. But I got to tell you, when you let a pro have that much time, they're going to shoot better than you think. And if they get hot, by the way, someone gave me a shout out on Twitter yesterday because I said, I'm probably on one of these shows. If you give Derrick Jones Jr. A lot of wide open threes, he's going to start making them at some point, probably win you the game. And that's pretty much what happened in that first half yesterday. So, that's what's going to happen. McDaniels will do it now. Well, McDaniels won't do it twice in a 7-game series, but somebody else might.
But what's ironic about that and McDaniels' performance, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I brought this up on the live show earlier on IG, but like, to my recollection, the games that Minnesota won in games 1 and 2, Jaden had off nights, both of those nights, didn't he? Or am I just misremembering that? I thought he was off, like, in game 1 especially. I thought he got off to a rough start in the series.
That sounds right. I mean, I'm calling up game 1. Do you want Jaden McDaniels? Oh, I hit the wrong button here. I want to go to the game. I didn't
get a chance to look it up before I got on, but like, I thought he had a rough night in game 1 or game 2.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
What was he?
He was 0 for 7 with a turnover and didn't score at all in game 1. McDaniels.
Game 2, he was 2 for 7. Yeah, he didn't really play well.
So in the 2 games they won, the first 2 games that they won right there, then he didn't have a good night at all. So it was just it's a little ironic, a little weird. But he definitely showed up tonight. So let's see who shows up in game 7.
And they brought up Cat's foul trouble too, when he really hasn't been in foul trouble at all in the series. The one game he had the 5th foul with 8 minutes to go in the 4th quarter was the game they won easily. So that really wasn't an issue. And didn't he go to the bench with? Did he go to the bench with 3 early tonight in the 2nd quarter? Maybe. Oh boy, was that tonight? Because but again, like, and I didn't get a chance to say this on this show tonight, but like, I know the game was a blowout, so the officials aren't the talk of anything.
But the officials were dang good tonight. Even the game was semi-close. Like, they had a really freaking good night, man. They were really on top of things. Good flow to the game for the most part. The players were getting shots. They were just missing them for Denver. I think the foul count was 8-7 at halftime. Like, I mean, good flow to the game. You know, Minnesota was 12 for 12 from free throw, 8 for 8 for Denver at halftime from free throw. So, I mean, it was really consistent and fair. It was just Denver couldn't do crap. So hopefully that, back to your point though, Chris, for game 7, the way that game is officiated at the start of that game will set the tone for the rest of it. And I think that you're going to see a very similarly officiated game to tonight is what I'm hoping for. That kind of style of, you know, we can't let it get out of hand early, but we're also not trying to put super early whistles on stuff and get people in foul trouble either. We want the players to play the game, decide the game, all that stuff. And that's going to be the approach, I think, in that game. And I know people are already probably talking about who they think they're going to see on that, you know, on that game from an officiating standpoint. But just so you know, the people that everybody is going to be talking about on that game, just so you know, without saying his name, whether you like it or not, he's one of the best officials in the daggum NBA. And if you want correct calls and you want
What's his name?
No, I'm not saying it. You already know it. You already know. You already know, baby.
Wait,
it's one of the best.
It's the guy that texted Tim Donahue 89 times in one day.
Oh, we're not going there, bro. Show me some proof, dang it. Show me some proof. All right. Ain't no proof.
It is late there. We're about to pass the witching hour on the East Coast, so we're going to let you guys go. But Combo, glad that you can sneak in here for a few and join us as always.
I'm always happy to join the conversation.
That's right.
It is good to see you guys tonight, man. Thanks again for having me on. Combo, Chris, good to see you guys too, man.
Good to see you, Chip.
Good to see you.
I have it going, fellas.
All right. And don't forget, sports fans, the B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, guys? I guess we'll go around. Let's go clockwise. Chip, are you in?
I'm in always, bro.
Chris?
I'm in.
And we got Combo.
Yeah, you know I'm in, Coach Nick. Right here.
You know